A CEO, his empire crumbling, looks at a simple waitress and laughs. "You save my company," he scoffs, his voice dripping with contempt, "and I'll give you $100 million. He scribbled the mocking promise on a restaurant napkin, a toast to his own arrogance. He thought it was a joke. He thought she was a joke. He couldn't have known that he just handed the contract of a lifetime to the one person in the city who could actually do the impossible. This is the story of how a single napkin, a forgotten genius, and an unbreakable will brought a titan to his knees. The Gilded Lyre was a restaurant built on silence. It existed in the hushed, carpeted canyons of the Chicago Loop, a place where billion-dollar deals were whispered over $300 cuts of steak. The air itself seemed expensive, smelling of old leather, truffle oil, and the quiet, metallic scent of power. And tonight, that power was rotting. Corbin Shaw, CEO of Aperture Dynamics, was hammered. It wasn't a sloppy, college party drunk, but a cold, pressurized rage that made the ice cubes in his whiskey glass tremble. Across from him sat Matthew, his chief legal counsel, a man with the pained, nervous expression of someone watching a lion bleed. "He knew," Corbin hissed, slamming the glass down. A splash of golden liquid leaped onto the white linen. Gideon Wolfe knew Odyssey would fail. He orchestrated the leak. He tanked the stock. And now he's launching the hostile bid. It's surgical. "Corbin, we're looking at the defenses," Matthew said, his voice barely a murmur. "The poison pill. But the board is spooked. The failure of the Odyssey AI was too public. They want an exit. Wolfe's offer it's an insult, but it's an offer." "An insult," Corbin laughed, a harsh, barking sound that made a nearby table flinch. "He wants to buy my life's work for 30 cents on the dollar. He wants to gut Aperture for its patents and leave me with nothing." Serving their table, unseen and unheard, was Maya Larkin. To Corbin Shaw, Maya was part of the furniture. She was the white apron, the silent hand that refilled his water, the anonymous presence that cleared his plates. She was a waitress, but Maya was a creature of observation. She had to be. In a place like the Gilded Lyre, you didn't just serve food, you managed egos. You learned to read the tension in a shoulder, the lie in a smile, the desperation in a man who grips his whiskey glass like it's the edge of a cliff. She had served Corbin Shaw before. She knew his usual order, rare, no sauce, his usual companion, Matthew, and his usual arrogance, boundless. Tonight, however, was different. Tonight, he was drowning. As she moved to refill his water, Corbin waved a dismissive hand. "Leave it. Just bring the check. My company is burning. I might as well pay the fiddler." "Sir," Maya said, her voice soft but clear, "the Cygnus Enterprises bid. Is it based on the assumption that the Odyssey mainframe is a total write-off?" The silence that fell over the table was absolute. Corbin Shaw slowly, very slowly, lifted his head. His blue eyes, normally sharp and predatory, were bloodshot, but focused on her with a sudden, violent intensity. Matthew froze, his fork halfway to his mouth. "What?" Corbin said. "Did you just say?" Maya's heart was hammering, but her training took over. Remain calm. De-escalate. "I apologize, sir. I overheard. I'll get the check." "No." Corbin leaned forward. The smell of expensive scotch washed over her. "You overheard. You, the waitress. You know the name Cygnus Enterprises. You know the word mainframe. What else do you know? Are you moonlighting as a corporate spy, selling secrets for tips?" "Corbin, please," Matthew whispered, panicked. I read the news," Maya said, her hands gripping the silver water pitcher so tightly her knuckles were white. The Odyssey AI failure was public. It was supposed to revolutionize logistics modeling, but the predictive algorithm kept corrupting the data. Corbin stared at her. He wasn't just drunk, he was offended. He was offended that a person like her could even pronounce the words predictive algorithm. "She reads the news," Corbin said to Matthew, a cruel, broken smile spreading across his face. "Well, bless her heart. She reads the news." He turned back to Maya, his voice dropping into a mocking, conspiratorial tone. "You know, you're right. The whole thing's a write-off. My board's about to fold. Gideon Wolfe, my dearest rival, is going to pick my bones clean on Monday morning. It's over. Unless—" He paused, a terrible, bright idea blooming in his drunken mind. "Unless you have a better idea." "Sir?" "You. Ms. Larkin." He glanced at her name tag. "You're smart. You read the news. You're standing here, listening to my private funeral. So go on. Save me. Save Aperture Dynamics. What's your brilliant plan, O Oracle of the Gilded Liar?" Maya stood, trapped. She could see the exits, the kitchen, the other tables, but his gaze held her pinned. She wanted to say, "I'm sorry," and walk away, but something in his absolute, condescending mockery sparked a different, colder fire inside her. "The board is wrong," she said, her voice dropping to a whisper he had to lean in to hear. "What?" "The board is wrong to accept a write-off," she said, a little stronger. "The Odyssey AI failed at logistics, but the algorithm itself, the way it failed, it wasn't corrupting the data, it was recontextualizing it. It was trying to find patterns they didn't ask it to find. It wasn't a failure in logistics, it was an accidental success in something else, something medical, maybe genomic sequencing." Matthew dropped his fork. It clattered loudly on the plate. Corbin Shaw's face went from ruddy anger to a pale, ghostly white. He stared at her, not as a CEO to a waitress, but as a man who had just seen a statue speak. What she had just said was not in the news. It was a secret, whispered fear from the lead engineering team, a hypothesis buried in a single, ignored report. How do you—" "I'll get your check, Mr. Shaw," Maya said, turning to leave. "Wait!" Corbin snapped. He was rattled, but his arrogance flooded back in, a defense mechanism. He couldn't accept what just happened. He had to reclaim control. He had to make her small again. "So that's it?" he laughed, reaching for the pen by the checkbook. "You think you've solved it? A waitress is going to waltz in and pivot my entire company into genomics. Wonderful, fantastic." He grabbed a thick linen napkin from the table. "Tell you what, Ms. Larkin," he said, his voice loud enough for the tables around them to hear. He started scribbling on the napkin. "You're a genius, a hidden gem. I'm going to make you an offer." He finished writing and held it up. "You," he said, pointing the pen at her, "save my company. You stop Gideon Wolfe. You make my board. Not fold. You do that, and I'll give you $100 million. He signed his name at the bottom with a flourish. The other diners were watching now, horrified and fascinated. "Corbin, my God, stop!" Matthew pleaded, trying to pull his arm down. "What? It's a contract," Corbin bellowed, laughing. He shoved the napkin into Maya's hand, pressing it against her chest. "There you go, sweetheart. Your big break. $100 million. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a bankruptcy to prepare for." He threw a wad of cash onto the table, far too much for the bill, and grabbed his coat. "Get it done by Monday, Larkin," he sneered. "I'm counting on you." He and Matthew stumbled out of the restaurant, leaving a crater of silence in their wake. Maya stood there, the warm, damp napkin crumpled in her fist. Her face was burning with a humiliation so profound it was almost paralyzing. She could feel the eyes of every customer, every co-worker, on her. She took a deep, steadying breath. She smoothed the napkin out. Written in frantic, angry blue ink from a custom Aperture Dynamics pen, it read, "I, Corbin Shaw, agree to pay Maya Larkin $100,000 million if she can save Aperture Dynamics from the Cygnus hostile takeover. Signed, Corbin Shaw." It was a joke, a cruel, drunken, pathetic joke. She looked at the signature. She looked at the door he had disappeared through. Maya Larkin unclenched her fist. She folded the napkin carefully, twice, and slipped it into the pocket of her apron. She cleared the rest of the table, her hands perfectly steady. She finished her shift, polished the silverware for the next day, and clocked out. But she didn't go home to her small apartment. She went to the 24-hour university library, sat down at a public terminal, and for the first time in 5 years, she let the mask of Waitress fall away. The analyst, the strategist, the prodigy that the world had tried to break and bury. She got to work. The fluorescent lights of the Harold Washington Library's computer center hummed, a sound Maya hadn't truly heard in years. To everyone else, she was just a woman in a waitress uniform, killing time before the morning shift. They couldn't see the hurricane of calculations, the rapid-fire connections firing in a mind that had been forced into dormancy. She wasn't just reading the news. She was diving. She bypassed the library's simple public interface, used a string of commands to open a secure terminal, and began to pull data from public-facing financial servers, academic white paper archives, and patent office databases. Her fingers, so recently accustomed to balancing trays, flew across the keyboard with a speed that was both foreign and familiar. This wasn't a guess. Her genomic sequencing comment wasn't a lucky shot in the dark. It was a diagnosis. 5 years ago, Maya Larkin was not a waitress. She was the lead data scientist at a boutique research firm, Orion Data. She was a prodigy, the author of a revolutionary predictive model she called Project Chimera. It was an AI designed to find patterns in chaos, specifically to sift through the billions of data points in the human genome to predict protein folding. It was her life's work, and Gideon Wolfe had been her mentor. The memory was sharp, a shard of glass in her mind. The spacious Orion office. The way Wolfe, then just a senior partner, would lean over her desk, his eyes gleaming. "You're not just writing code, Maya," he'd said, his voice a paternal murmur. "You're teaching a machine to think." Then came the betrayal, the presentation to the board, the slides that had his name on them, not hers. The moment she stood up to object, and the way he'd looked at her with cold, pitying eyes. "Ms. Larkin has been under a great deal of stress," he had announced to the room. "Her model is erratic, unstable." He had accused her of sabotage, of faking her results. He used a safer, neutered version of her code, a version he had deliberately crippled, as proof that her original model was flawed. The board, eager to back a rainmaker like Wolfe, had sided with him. She was fired by noon. By the end of the month, she was blackballed. Gideon Wolfe had used his significant influence to paint her as brilliant but unstable, a rogue coder, a liability. He had taken her work, founded Cygnus Enterprises on the back of it, and erased her. She had been serving $40 appetizers for the last 3 years. Now, sitting in the library's glow, she saw the final, insulting piece of the puzzle. She pulled the public-facing failure logs from Aperture's Odyssey AI. She ran them through a decryption algorithm she'd written in her head. The Odyssey AI wasn't just based on her work. It was her work, a corrupted, bastardized version of it. Wolf, in his arrogance, must have licensed the safer, flawed version of Chimera to Aperture, knowing it would eventually fail. He had sold them a time bomb. It wasn't corrupting the data, she whispered to the empty room. It wasn't trying to model logistics. She ran a cross-reference. The failure signatures, the strings of code that the Aperture engineers had labeled as corrupt data, were identical to the Chimera model's original genomic analysis queries. The AI hadn't failed. It had been trying to do its real job. It was a racehorse being forced to pull a plow, and it was finally breaking the harness. Gideon Wolf had seeded his rival with a self-destructing program. He had waited for it to fail, leaked the failure to the press to tank the stock, and then, like a vulture, swooped in with a hostile takeover. It wasn't just to get Aperture's patents. It was to get his hands on the Odyssey mainframe, to wipe the server, and to bury the only existing evidence that his entire career was built on her stolen code. He was cleaning up his tracks. He's not just buying a company, Maya realized, her blood turning to ice. He's destroying the murder weapon. She looked at the clock. 4:17 a.m. The library was quiet. The city was asleep. But Maya Larkin was, for the first time in 5 years, wide awake. She had a crumpled napkin in her pocket, a promise for $100 million, but she also had a target. Saving Aperture Dynamics was no longer the goal. It was the means. The goal was the utter, surgical, and public destruction of Gideon Wolf. She shut down the terminal, grabbed her jacket, and walked out into the pre-dawn chill. She no longer looked like a waitress. She looked like a general on the morning of a war. She needed to get inside Aperture Dynamics, and she knew exactly whose name to use to open the door. Monday morning, 8:00 a.m. The lobby of the Aperture Dynamics tower was a scene from a disaster movie. Employees stood in funereal knots, whispering and checking their phones. The massive ticker tape screen that wrapped around the atrium was a river of streaming red. Down 41%. Corbin Shaw looked like he hadn't slept. He was in his glass-walled corner office, tie loose, yelling into a phone. "I don't care what the futures market is doing. You tell Peterson and the rest of the board that if they call an emergency vote, I'll... His assistant, trembling, buzzed his intercom. "Mr. Shaw, I'm sorry. There's a woman here to see you. She won't give a reason." "She just said, 'I'm not seeing anyone,'" Corbin roared. "She said to tell you the waitress is here to save your company," the assistant finished in a rush. Corbin froze, the phone halfway from his ear. He slowly turned his head toward the lobby. Standing at the security desk was Maya Larkin. She wasn't in her white apron. She had gone home, showered, and changed into the only power outfit she still owned. A simple, charcoal grey pantsuit, bought from a thrift store 5 years ago for her first interview at Orion. Her hair was pulled back in a severe, functional knot. She held a thin, worn laptop case. She looked pale, exhausted, and utterly terrifying. Corbin slammed the phone down. "Don't let her leave." A moment later, he and Matthew, the lawyer, burst into the lobby. Matthew looked at her with pure, unadulterated panic. "Miss Larkin, this is not a good time," Matthew stammered. "What you're doing is Aperture Dynamics still your client, Matthew?" Maya's voice was flat, cutting through the lobby's ambient fear. "Because if it is, you'll advise Mr. Shaw to give me 30 minutes in a secure room, or by noon, he won't have a company left to save." Corbin stared at her. The drunken haze was gone. In its place was the raw desperation of a gambler who'd lost everything. He had one chip left. He didn't know why, but he felt like she was holding it. "My office. Now." 10 minutes later, they were in a soundproof conference room. The board was already assembling via video call on the giant screen, their faces grim and furious. A formidable-looking man, Peterson, was already speaking. "Which is why we are exercising the emergency clause to call a vote, Corbin. We are accepting Gideon Wolf's offer. We cut our losses. We salvage what we can." "Shut up, Peterson!" Corbin yelled. The room went silent. The board members looked shocked. Corbin's hand was shaking. He pointed at Maya. This is Maya Larkin. She has a different plan." Peterson laughed, a dry, cruel sound. "A different plan? Who is this? Your new analyst? Your barista? The ship is sinking, Corbin, and you're bringing on passengers." "She's the waitress from The Liar," Matthew whispered, horrified. The revelation hung in the air. Peterson's face went from angry to incandescent with rage. "A waitress! You've brought a waitress to a board meeting. You're insane. You're finished. I'm calling the vote." Gideon Wolf created the Odyssey flaw. Maya spoke, and the words landed with the force of a physical blow. The board members stopped talking. Peterson, about to end the call, paused. "What did you say?" Peterson said. Maya walked to the head of the table and opened her laptop. She plugged it into the monitor. "My name is Maya Larkin," she said, her voice amplified by the room's microphones. 5 years ago, I was the lead data scientist at Orion Data. I created a predictive model called Project Chimera. It was designed for genomic sequencing. My mentor, Gideon Wolf, stole my work, founded Cygnus Enterprises, and blackballed me from the industry. A murmur went through the board. They knew the name Cygnus. They didn't know Chimera. "The Odyssey AI," she continued, her fingers flying, bringing up 2 sets of code side by side, "is a corrupted version of my Chimera code that he licensed to you. He designed it to fail. The failure logs that your engineers couldn't understand." She highlighted a string of data. "This isn't a logistics error. This is a query for a human protein sequence. Wolf sold you a Trojan horse, waited for it to break, leaked the failure, and is now buying your company for pennies. Not for your patents, but to destroy this mainframe. He's here to erase the only evidence of his original crime." The room was deathly quiet. Corbin was white as a sheet. "This is," Peterson stammered, "this is an incredible accusation." "It's the truth," Maya said, "and I can prove it." Corbin finally found his voice. "What do you need?" "I need 48 hours, Maya said, turning to him. "The hostile bid is public. The board can't legally accept it until Wednesday morning. Give me 48 hours at terminal and root access to the Odyssey mainframe. And I want her." She pointed to a small image on the video call, a woman who hadn't spoken, who was just watching with intensely intelligent, skeptical eyes. "Dr. Eva Rostova. She's your head of R&D. I've read her papers. She's the only one smart enough to keep up." Corbin looked at the board. "You wanted to vote? Fine. Let's vote. All in favor of accepting Wolf's offer, destroying the company, and letting that bastard win. Or, you give me 48 hours. You give her 48 hours. You vote no on the offer, and you let us fight." A long silence. Peterson looked at Maya's screen. He looked at Corbin's desperate face. "God help us all," Peterson grumbled. 48 hours, sure. You'd better not be playing us." The screen went blank. Corbin collapsed into his chair, breathing hard. Maya was already packing her laptop. "Dr. Rostova, the data center. Now. The clock is ticking." The Aperture Dynamics data center was a cathedral of cold blue light. The hum of the servers was a physical weight. Standing in the center of the room, looking like a queen in her own icy domain, was Dr. Eva Rostova. She was a tall woman with silver-streaked hair and a look of profound skepticism. "So," Rostova said, her voice a low, precise rumble. "You are the Waitress, the one who has convinced our CEO to commit professional suicide. And you're the engineer who's been building a cage for a racehorse," Maya shot back, not breaking stride. She set her laptop down at the main console. "You've been treating Odyssey like a math problem. It's a language problem. Now, are you going to help me? Or are you going to get out of my way?" Rostova's eyes narrowed. "What do you think you're going to find in my system that my team hasn't?" "The truth," Maya said. She sat down. Her fingers began to move. For the next 2 hours, Rostova watched. And what she saw, she could barely believe. Maya wasn't hacking. She was communing. She moved through the Odyssey architecture, not like an intruder, but like a creator. She navigated terabytes of code, pulling up files, running diagnostics, and all the while she kept up a running commentary. And that's the flaw, see? You told it to find the fastest shipping route, but it's processing 10,000 variables. It's not just looking at trucks, it's looking at barometric pressure, at global commodity futures, at sunspot activity. It's not a logistics AI, it's a macroeconomic oracle. Rostova stepped closer, her hostility forgotten, replaced by a dawning, electric awe. We classified those as anomalies, corrupt data. You called it corrupt because you didn't know what it was saying, Maya whispered, her eyes glued to the screen. But Wolf did. He knew. He's not just trying to hide his theft. He's trying to hide this, the real chimera. He couldn't control it, so he tried to bury it. And now he's trying to buy it. Suddenly, Rostova's eyes went wide. She grabbed a nearby keyboard. Larkin. Maya Larkin. From Orion Data. The Chimera paper. The one that was retracted. "I didn't retract it," Maya said, her voice tight. "I was erased." I built my dissertation on that paper," Rostova said, her voice shaking. "I thought you were a myth. A cautionary tale." "I'm a waitress," Maya said, "and I'm about to find the kill switch. Help me." Rostova was in. All in. For the next 36 hours they didn't sleep. They lived on stale coffee and pure adrenaline, a two-woman army waging a digital war. Corbin Shaw sat in the corner, watching his company get dissected and rebuilt by two geniuses, feeling for the first time in his life like a complete and total amateur. And then they found it. "It's not a flaw," Maya breathed, her eyes wide. "It's a keyhole. Buried deep in the Odyssey mainframe, hidden inside the corrupt data, was a partitioned, encrypted, and dormant section of the hard drive. Chimera. The real one. Her original, beautiful, perfect code. He backed it up here," Maya said, a disbelieving laugh escaping her. "He couldn't bring himself to delete it. His ego, he had to keep it. He hid it inside his rival's company. He's a dragon, hoarding his gold," Rostova agreed. But as Maya began to decrypt the partition, her face went from triumph to horror. "Oh no, Ava, look at this." Inside the partition wasn't just chimera. It was a new set of commands, a logic bomb. "What is it?" Corbin asked, stepping forward. "It's a dead man's switch," Rostova said, her face pale. "Tied to the Cygnus Enterprises acquisition. The moment the sale is finalized, it's set to detonate." "Detonate what?" Corbin asked. "Everything," Maya said, her voice a hollow whisper. "It's a full-spectrum data wipe. Odyssey, your R&D, your financials, your backups. He wasn't just going to buy you, Corbin. He was going to execute you. He was going to wipe aperture dynamics from the face of the earth." Corbin stumbled back, physically sick. He had been a day, maybe less, from total annihilation. We have to stop it, he said. Maya looked at the code. The cold, analytical fire was back in her eyes. She looked at Rostova. A slow, dangerous smile spread across her face. No, Maya said. We're not going to stop it. We're going to reroute it. Tuesday, 14 p.m. The 48-hour deadline was approaching. The board was reconvening, their faces on the giant screen like a digital tribunal. Corbin, Peterson began, his voice gravelly. The clock is up. We've seen nothing. The stock is still flatlining. Wolf's offer expires at 9 a.m. tomorrow. This is our last chance. We have to take the deal. Corbin Shaw stood at the head of the table. He looked exhausted, but the frantic, sweaty desperation was gone. He looked calm. Gentlemen, Corbin said, you're right. The offer is on the table, and I am asking you, officially, to vote no. The boardroom exploded. Have you lost your mind? Peterson roared. It's an act of fiduciary self-destruction. It would be, Corbin said, if we were still Aperture Dynamics, the failed logistics company. But we're not. As of about an hour ago, we are Aperture Health, and our new flagship product, Chimera, just successfully modeled the protein-folding sequence of a rare pancreatic cancer in 4 hours, a task that would have taken a university supercomputer 5 years. He nodded to Maya, who sat at the console, unseen by the board. She'd fed him the line. The board was silent. What are you saying? Peterson asked. I'm saying, Corbin said, that Gideon Wolf's offer is no longer an insult. It's a rounding error. Vote no. Trust me. One more time. One by one, the votes came in. No. 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 The motion was carried. They were, for better or worse, all in. Corbin immediately left the room and called Gideon Wolf. He put it on speaker, Maya and Rostova listening. Wolf picked up on the first ring. Corbin, I see your board has a death wish. It's over, Gideon, Corbin said, his voice a low growl. It's been over for a week, you fool. Wolf laughed. I'll be dropping my offer to 10 cents on the dollar. I'm going to bleed you dry, and I will dance on your grave. No, Corbin said, reading from the script Maya had written for him. I mean, it's over for you. I know what you did. I know about Project Chimera. I know you put the flaw in Odyssey. I know you stole it from Maya Larkin. The silence on the other end of the line was deafening. The only sound was a faint, sharp intake of breath. You're delirious, Wolf finally said. But the arrogant confidence was gone. He sounded thin. Am I? We have the code, Gideon. The real code. The partition. The logic bomb. We have it all. Wolf hung up. In the data center, Maya, Rostova, and Corbin stood around the console. A new window was open on Maya's screen, a live look at the Odyssey mainframe's back-end access logs. He's rattled, Corbin said. He's more than rattled, Maya said, her eyes fixed on the screen. He's terrified. He knows we have the evidence. He can't let the acquisition fail or succeed. He has to. He has to destroy the evidence. Now. He'll trigger the bomb manually, Rostova whispered. And he'll do it from a remote, secure terminal, thinking he's covering his tracks, Maya added. But he's not logging into your server, Corbin. He's logging into my trap. They watched. For 10 agonizing minutes, the screen was static. Then, it flashed. Remote. Admin. Access. Granted. GW Cygnus Prime. He's in, Corbin breathed. Command. Initiate protocol Scorched Earth. Verify wine. He hit execute, Rostova said, gripping the console. He thinks he's wiping our servers, Maya said, her voice a cold, level monotone. But the bomb isn't routed to our mainframe anymore. A new process began, visible only to them. Rerouting packet Cygnus Prime. Compiling data Chimera origin. Compiling logs aperture. Fail. Compiling memos stock manipulation. What is that? Corbin asked. That, Maya said, is the logic bomb. But instead of deleting data, it's compiling it. It's packaging up every single piece of evidence. The original Chimera code with my name on it. The logs of his illegal access. The memos from his server detailing the plan to tank your stock. A full, digital confession. Package compiled. Attaching signature. GW Cygnus Prime. It's using his own authenticated digital signature, Rostova said, a look of pure, savage joy on her face. He's signing his own confession, targeting recipients. And where is it going? Corbin asked. He thought he was wiping a server, Maya said, as a final sending message flashed and then disappeared. But he was actually just hitting send on an email. She brought up the recipient list. 2. The Securities and Exchange Commission, the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, and the Board of Directors of Cygnus Enterprises. Maya Larkin finally sat back, taking her first deep breath in 2 days. Checkmate, she whispered. Wednesday, 8:59 a.m. The atrium of the Aperture Dynamics Tower was not a place of work. It was a wake. Employees stood in small, silent clusters, nursing cold coffee, their eyes fixed on the massive ticker tape screen that wrapped around the lobby. The river of red data had slowed to a trickle, the stock, APE, frozen in pre-market trading, at its all-time low. They were all just waiting for the 9:00 a.m. bell, waiting for Gideon Wolf's offer to expire, waiting for the end. Corbin Shaw stood apart from them, flanked by Dr. Rostova and Maya. He was a statue, his face grey. Rostova was vibrating with a nervous energy, checking her tablet every few seconds. Maya was the calm center of the storm. She just watched the clock. 9:00 a.m., the bell. The market opened. The ticker didn't move. The Aperture stock symbol remained frozen. Nothing happened. A confused, disappointed murmur rippled through the crowd. 9:01 a.m. The ticker blinked. The entire wraparound screen went black, plunging the atrium into a sudden, dim silence. A collective gasp then. It rebooted. But it wasn't their stock feed. It was a breaking news banner, plastered 20 feet high. Cygnus CEO Gideon Wolf accused of massive corporate fraud, stock manipulation, IP theft. For a full 5 seconds, the only sound was the hum of the building's ventilation. Then a single phone buzzed. Then another, and another. Within seconds, a wave of digital chimes swept the room. People looked from the giant screen to their phones and back, their faces contorting from dread to pure, unadulterated shock. The main screen flashed, a new headline pushing the first one down. Wolf's confession email sent to Serki. Media rocks Wall Street. Cygnus stock halted in freefall. And then, the one that made every eye in the room find Maya. Who is Maya Larkin, the ghost in the code, whose work Wolf allegedly stole? As if summoned by the news, the ape ticker, which had been frozen in the corner, flashed. It turned from red to green. It didn't just tick up, it leaped. Ape, plus 14%. Ape, 30%. Ape, 5%. A single, joyous roar erupted from the employees. The sound was deafening, a physical release of a week's worth of terror. The dread hadn't just lifted, it had been vaporized. Corbin stood paralyzed, his knees weak. His personal phone, which had been so silent it felt like a dead brick in his pocket, began to vibrate. It didn't just ring, it screamed, vibrating so hard it nearly jumped from his hand. He looked at the screen. 22 missed calls. It rang again. A banker who had told him he was functionally bankrupt 2 days ago. "Corbin!" the man yelled, his voice painfully jovial. "My friend, I always knew you had a plan. Incredible, just incredible." Before Corbin could form a word, another call beeped in. A pharma CEO. What's this Chimera project? Another. An investment bank. Can we partner? Is it true? You have the real code? He was drowning, but this time in a torrent of opportunity. He stumbled away from the noise, pushing open the door to his glass-walled office, sealing out the chairs. Maya was already there, standing by the window, watching the celebration below. The TV in the corner of his office was on, sound muted. It was a live feed. Gideon Wolfe, his face a mask of disbelief and purple rage, was being led from his penthouse in handcuffs. You did it, Corbin said, his voice cracking. He wasn't talking to the bankers, he was talking to her. You did the impossible. You saved us. You destroyed him. Maya didn't turn. She just watched the screen as the van doors closed on Wolfe, his immaculate suit crumpled. She watched the man who had stolen her life, who had called her a saboteur, who had erased her, be erased himself. There was no smile on her face, no fist pump of victory. It was just quiet. The closing of a circle, a deep, 5-year-old wound, finally cauterized, a debt finally paid. Corbin's private cell, his direct line to his personal banker, began to ring. He answered it, his hand shaking. Yes? You're sure? The credit lines are... All of them? My God, thank you. He hung up, sinking into his chair. He stared at his own hands, which were no longer trembling. The liquidity is back. The credit lines are restored. The company is... It's solvent. He let out a breath he felt he'd been holding for a month. We're not just saved, Maya. We're going to be one of the biggest companies on Earth. He finally looked at her, really looked at her. The architect of it all, the calm eye of the hurricane. So, he said, the full staggering weight of the last 72 hours and the crumpled napkin in his desk drawer landing on him. I guess I owe you some money. 1 week later, the Gilded Lyre. The restaurant was a mausoleum of polished wood and starched white linen. It was 7 p.m. on a Friday, a time when this room should have been buzzing with the low, confident hum of the city's elite. Instead, it was utterly, profoundly silent. The chandeliers were lit, the tables were set, but every chair was empty. It was a stage, meticulously prepared for a final act. Corbin Shaw had booked the entire restaurant. He sat at his usual table, the one where his world had nearly ended. He was a different man. The brutish, club-like arrogance was gone, replaced by a thin, brittle energy. He wore an impeccably tailored suit, but he looked like a man who had recently relearned how to tie a tie. He kept checking his watch, a nervous tick that betrayed his attempt at calm. Across from him sat Matthew, the lawyer. Matthew's face was pale, his hands clasped tightly around a pristine, overstuffed leather briefcase on his lap. He looked like a man about to deliver a eulogy, or perhaps his own resignation. At 7:01 p.m., the front doors opened. The sound of a single set of footsteps on the marble entryway echoed in the cavernous room. Maya Larkin walked in. She was not in her waitress uniform, a costume of servitude. She was not in her thrift store suit, an armor of desperation. She wore a simple, elegant black dress that spoke of quiet, unassailable confidence. Her hair was down, resting on her shoulders. She looked rested. She looked centered. She looked, for the first time in 5 years, like herself. She didn't look angry. She didn't look triumphant. She looked resolved. Corbin stood, a gesture of respect he would not have dreamed of a week ago. He pulled out the chair opposite him. Maya, he said, his voice quiet. Thank you for coming. Corbin, Matthew, She sat, placing a small, simple purse on the table beside her. She surveyed the empty room, her gaze sweeping over the silent waiting tables. "This is dramatic, even for you." Corbin managed a thin smile. "I thought privacy was in order. For this." He clasped his hands on the table, a CEO regaining his footing, however shaky. I don't know where to begin. The stock is at 150 a share, and it's climbing. We've been on the cover of every financial paper for 3 days. Aperture Health. It's a new world." He leaned forward, his eyes trying to meet hers with sincerity. "Dr. Rostova is heading the Chimera division. She has already, officially, requested you as her chief scientist. Any salary you want, any terms, a signing bonus, stock options that would, well, they'd make you a very, very wealthy woman. Just name them. It's yours." He had laid his first card on the table. It was a good one. A kingdom. Maya was silent for a moment. She didn't look at him, but at the empty chair at the next table, the one where a diner had watched her with pitying eyes that night. "That's a very generous offer, Corbin," she said, her voice soft but clear. "But Dr. Rostova is brilliant. She'll manage just fine." She turned her gaze back to him, her eyes finally, fully, connecting with his. "That's not why I'm here." Corbin's smile faded. The air in the room grew colder. "No," he said, the nervousness returning. "No, I suppose not." He gave a small, sharp nod to his lawyer. This was Matthew's cue. Matthew, looking profoundly uncomfortable, cleared his throat. He snapped open the brass clasps on his briefcase. The click-click sound was unnaturally loud in the silence. He pulled out a single, long envelope and slid it across the table. It stopped just short of her hands. "Maya." "Ms. Larkin," Matthew began, his voice rehearsed, as if he'd practiced this in front of a mirror. "On behalf of the board of Aperture Dynamics, Aperture Health, we wish to extend this gesture of infinite gratitude, a sum that reflects the unconventional nature of your contribution." Maya did not move. She did not touch the envelope. Matthew continued, his voice gaining a tinny, legalistic confidence. "This is a certified check for $10 million. It's a finder's fee. A thank you bonus for services rendered." He paused, then went for the kill. "The other matter, the napkin, well, I think we can all agree. It was a joke. A contract written by an intoxicated man under extreme duress on a, shall we say, unconventional medium. It's not legally enforceable. No court would be reasonable, Maya." It was Corbin breaking in. He had seen the look on her face, a subtle tightening at the corners of her mouth, and it terrified him. He held up his hands, a gesture of supplication. "Please, $10 million. It's life-changing money. You'd never have to work again. You could start your own company. 100 million. Maya, that's not real. That's a number from a... It would cripple the company's recovery. It's too much. Too fast. It's unreasonable." "Reasonable," Maya repeated. The word was flat, metallic. She let it hang in the air, a single discordant note. She looked around the room. "Reasonable. Was it reasonable?" she asked, her voice dropping to a near whisper. "When you bellowed at me? When you called me sweetheart while I was just trying to do my job? When you held up that napkin for the whole restaurant to see, laughing at the waitress who read the news?" Corbin flinched, the color draining from his face. I was drunk. I was an ass. I have never been more sorry for anything in my life." "I know," Maya said. "You were. And you are." Her voice was not filled with rage. It was a cold, pure, factual statement. The quiet finality of it was more damning than any scream. "You're right about one thing, Corbin. It was never about the money." She reached into her purse. She pulled out a small, hard, plastic laminated rectangle. It looked like a permanent press ID card. But inside, pressed like a dead flower, was the crumpled, ink-stained linen napkin. She placed it on the table between them. The small click of the laminate on the polished wood sounded like a gavel. "It was about this," she said, tapping the plastic. "It was about the promise. It was about you, and men like you, sitting in rooms like this, deciding the fate of the world, and thinking that the people who serve you, the people who refill your water, who park your car, who clean your offices, who balance your books, are invisible, that we're scenery, that our work, our ideas, our dignity can be bought for a tip or dismissed with a laugh." She slid the $10 million envelope back across the table, nudging it with her fingertip. "I am declining your offer of employment, and I am declining this bonus. I don't want your 10 million. Corbin stared at the check, then at her. His face was a mask of pure, unadulterated confusion. "Then, what? What do you want?" Maya leaned forward, her eyes locking with his, and the full, unbridled force of her intellect hit him. "I want the 100 million. I want you to honor the contract." Matthew groaned, a strangled sound. "Miss Larkin, please, I'm advising you as a lawyer. This is a terrible—" "Matthew, you're his lawyer," Maya cut him off, her voice like a scalpel. "And as his lawyer, you should know that I've already had this joke validated by 2 separate senior partners at Jenner & Block. Their opinion is definitive." She turned back to Corbin, but her words were aimed at his lawyer. "A contract requires an offer, acceptance, and consideration. The offer, $100 million. The acceptance? My silence that night, and my subsequent actions. And the consideration? Oh, the consideration was me saving your entire company and handing you Aperture Health on a platter." Matthew started to speak, but Maya rolled right over him. "Your client's intoxication is not a defense, especially when the terms are clear and the other party provably executed their side of the bargain. Your client was not under duress. He was being arrogant. And arrogance, Matthew, is not a legal defense." She leaned in, her final, lethal move. "So, we have 2 choices. You can honor this, here, tonight, or my new legal team, which I will be retaining with a very significant, loan, will file suit tomorrow morning. And when they file, they will also file an injunction against the Aperture Health rebrand. They will freeze all assets tied to the Chimera Code, which, as Dr. Eva Rostova will enthusiastically testify under oath, is my intellectual property, licensed to you in a deal that has not yet been formalized. Because you were too busy lowballing me to get the IP paperwork signed." Corbin and Matthew were chalk white. She had them. She had them by the throat, the wallet, and the future. "You'd do that?" Corbin whispered, his voice cracking. You'd destroy the company? After you just saved it?" "No," Maya said simply, her voice softening just a fraction. "You would. Again. All to avoid paying what you owe. I'm just a waitress, remember? I'm just here to collect on the check." A long, terrible, restaurant-sized silence descended. Matthew looked like he was going to be physically ill. Corbin just stared at the laminated napkin. And then Corbin Shaw did something strange. He started to laugh. It wasn't the cruel, barking laugh from the other night. It wasn't even a laugh of humor. It was a quiet, defeated, breathless sound. The sound of a high-tension cable finally snapping. He put his head in his hands, his shoulders shaking, and just laughed. My God, he finally said, looking up at her. His eyes were shining, not with tears, but with a profound, terrifying awe. You are magnificent. You are absolutely terrifying. He straightened his suit jacket. He was done fighting. He was done negotiating. He was, for the first time, simply beaten. He nodded to his lawyer, a sharp, final command. Matthew, get the other check. Matthew's eyes widened in one last, pathetic protest. Corbin, the board, the liquidity. The board will do what I tell them, Corbin snapped, his old command returning, but this time in her service. Or I'll tell them why I'm paying it. Get the check. Matthew's hands were shaking. He reached back into the briefcase, into a separate, zippered compartment he had clearly been ordered to never open. He pulled out another envelope. He slid it across the table. Maya picked it up. She opened it. She looked at the certified check, at the long string of zeros, $100,000. She stood up. She folded the check once and put it in her purse. She left the laminated napkin on the table, a receipt, a trophy, a permanent reminder. Wait, Corbin said, standing as well, a sudden panic in his voice. Maya, what now? For you? After all this? What do you do? He was lost. He had defined his life by his company, and she had just taken a piece of it, proven herself his superior, and was now walking away. He couldn't compute her next move. Maya turned at the door, framed by the empty restaurant, the scene of her humiliation and her ultimate victory. Gideon Wolfe stole my past, Corbin, she said, her voice clear and carrying in the silence. You tried to buy my future. I think I'll just go build my own. She walked out of the Gilded Lyre, the sound of her footsteps fading, leaving Corbin Shaw alone in his silent, empty monument, staring at a $100 million napkin. And that's how the tables were turned. Maya Larkin proved that it doesn't matter what title you hold, but what value you have. The $100 million promise, made in mockery, became the most expensive lesson Corbin Shaw ever learned. What did you think of Maya's final move? Was it justice, or was it the ultimate revenge? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you loved this story of justice and the underdog, do me a huge favor. Hit that like button, share this video with someone who needs to see it, and make sure you subscribe to the channel for more incredible stories just like this one. Click that notification bell so you never miss an update. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next story.